The Zephyrian scout ship Whispered Truth drifted through the void between star systems, its crystalline hull catching the distant light of a red dwarf. Commander Veltar's four eyes focused on the readings streaming across his bioluminescent display panels. What he saw made his breathing slits flutter with confusion. "Sensor operator Crix, confirm these readings," Veltar commanded, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that indicated serious concern among his people. Crix's tentacles danced over the organic control surfaces, cross-referencing data streams. "Confirmed, Commander. We're detecting what appears to be a massive fleet engagement in the Terran system. Energy signatures are unprecedented." The Zephyrian Collective had been monitoring the newest members of the Galactic Council with mild interest. Humans had joined the galactic community barely 50 cycles ago, presenting themselves as a reasonably advanced but unremarkable species. They possessed faster-than-light travel, basic energy weapons, and showed adequate intelligence in diplomatic matters. The Council had categorized them as a Class 7 civilization, suitable for minor trade partnerships and cultural exchange. Nothing had prepared the galaxy for what they were witnessing now. "Display the tactical overview," Veltar ordered. The holographic projection materialized before them, showing the Sol system in three-dimensional detail. What they saw defied everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. Where intelligence reports had suggested perhaps 200 vessels in the entire human fleet, the display now showed thousands of ships arranged in complex formations throughout the system. But these weren't the crude, bulky vessels the humans had shown to galactic observers during their integration process. These ships were sleek, deadly, and emanating energy signatures that rivaled those of the most advanced Zephyrian dreadnoughts. Massive carrier vessels launched what appeared to be fighter craft in numbers that boggled the mind. Battleships the size of small moons moved with impossible grace, their weapon systems charging with energies that registered off the scale of Zephyrian sensors. "Commander," Crix's voice trembled with disbelief, "I'm reading over 15,000 individual vessels. The largest ones they're bigger than anything in our fleet. And the energy output." He paused, checking his readings again. "Sir, some of these ships are generating more power than our entire home station." Veltar felt his body temperature drop, a biological response his species had evolved when faced with potential extinction threats. "Who are they fighting?" The answer came as the sensors painted a clearer picture. The human fleet wasn't engaged in some internal conflict or training exercise. They were facing an invasion force that had struck terror into the hearts of every spacefaring civilization for millennia. The Devourers. The Devourers were the galaxy's nightmare made manifest. A hive-minded species of biomechanical horrors that had swept across the outer rim territories like a plague. Entire worlds had been stripped bare, their populations consumed to fuel the Devourers' endless reproduction cycles. Even the mighty Kethmoran Empire, with their legendary warrior caste and weapons that could crack planets, had fallen before the Devourer swarms. For 300 cycles, the Devourers had been slowly pushing inward toward the galactic core. Every military force sent against them had been overwhelmed, absorbed, and turned into more biomass for their war machine. The Galactic Council had established a quarantine zone, hoping to contain them while desperately searching for some way to stop their advance. Now, somehow, a Devourer fleet had bypassed all the outer defenses and struck directly at Earth. The humans' homeworld should have been consumed in a matter of hours, adding another 50 billion lives to the Devourers' endless appetite. Instead, Veltar was watching what could only be described as a massacre. But the victims weren't the humans. "Focus sensors on grid 77 Alpha," Veltar commanded, his voice barely above a whisper. The display zoomed in on a section of space where a cluster of human vessels surrounded a Devourer bioship. The alien vessel was massive, easily 5 kilometers in length, its organic hull bristling with weapon growths and launch bays for fighter organisms. Intelligence reports suggested that a single such ship could devastate an entire solar system. As they watched, the human ships opened fire with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Beams of coherent energy sliced through the Devourer's adaptive armor like it was paper. Projectile weapons launched what appeared to be small suns, each impact vaporizing massive sections of biomass. Most terrifying of all were weapons that seemed to work at the molecular level, causing entire portions of the alien ship to simply cease existing. By the eternal currents, Crix breathed. They're not just fighting the Devourers. They're winning. The engagement lasted less than 10 standard minutes. When it was over, the bioship that could have destroyed worlds was nothing but expanding plasma and debris. The human vessels moved on to their next target without pause, their formations shifting with military precision that spoke of decades of practice. How many? Veltar asked quietly. Crix's tentacles were shaking as he processed the sensor data. The humans have destroyed 47 Devourer capital ships, Commander. 47. In the past 6 hours. To put that in perspective, the combined forces of 3 galactic sectors had once managed to destroy a single Devourer capital ship, and it had cost them 2/3 of their fleet in the process. The victory had been celebrated as the greatest military achievement in recent galactic history. The humans had just done it 47 times before breakfast. Sir, Crix continued, his voice growing more alarmed, I'm detecting multiple human fleets throughout the system. This isn't their entire military. This is just one response force. Veltar's mind reeled as he processed the implications. If this was just one human fleet, how many ships did they actually possess? Where had they been hiding this military might? And, most importantly, why had they concealed it from the galactic community? The answer came as they watched the final phase of the battle. The remaining Devourer forces, perhaps 100 bioships that could have conquered most civilizations, began to retreat toward the system's edge. The humans didn't pursue them. Instead, they did something that chilled Veltar to his core. They herded them. Human vessels moved to cut off escape routes, forcing the Devourers into a specific vector. At first, Veltar thought they were simply ensuring the aliens left their space. Then, he saw what waited in the direction the humans were driving their enemies. A single human ship hung in the void, larger than anything in the battle fleet. It was clearly a different class of vessel, built for a purpose that became terrifyingly clear as the Devourers approached it. The ship's hull split open like a flower, revealing an interior that defied physics. Gravitational anomalies swirled within, bending space and time into configurations that made Veltar's eyes water just to look at them. One by one, the Devourer bioships were pulled into the anomaly and vanished. Not destroyed, not vaporized, simply removed from existence as if they had never been. Within minutes, an invasion force that could have devastated half the galaxy was gone, leaving no trace except for the expanding cloud of debris from the ships that had been conventionally destroyed. The human fleet then did something even more unsettling. They began cleaning up. Specialized vessels moved through the battlefield, collecting every piece of debris, every fragment of Devourer biomass, even scanning for and retrieving individual atoms that might have drifted away from the battle zone. Within hours, the space around Earth showed no sign that a battle had ever taken place. Commander, Crix's voice was barely audible, they're done. The entire Devourer invasion force has been eliminated. Total human casualties. He paused, checking his readings again. 0 reported losses. Veltar stared at the display, watching as the human fleet began to disperse. Some ships departed the system entirely, presumably returning to hidden bases throughout human space. Others simply vanished, their stealth systems activating with technology that made them invisible even to Zephyrian sensors. Sir, we need to report this to the collective, Crix said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sure anyone would believe their report. Veltar nodded slowly, but his mind was racing with darker thoughts. The humans had just demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had weapons that could eliminate threats that had terrified civilizations for centuries. Most disturbing of all, they had kept these capabilities completely hidden while integrating into galactic society. What else were the humans hiding? And what did they truly want? As the whispered truth began its journey back to Zephyrian space, Veltar couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had just witnessed something that would change everything. The humans had revealed themselves to be far more than the peaceful traders and explorers they claimed to be. They were apex predators, and they had been studying their potential prey. The thought that chilled him most was a simple one. If the humans could hide a military force capable of defeating the Devourers, what other secrets were they keeping? And, more importantly, had the galaxy just witnessed humanity's full capabilities, or merely a glimpse of what they were truly capable of? As the red dwarf's light faded behind them, Veltar began composing his report to the collective. Somehow, he doubted that even his own people would be prepared for what he had to tell them. The humans weren't just another member species of the Galactic Council. They were something else entirely. Something that made the Devourers look like a minor inconvenience by comparison. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been holding back. And that realization would terrify every thinking being from the core worlds to the outer rim. Because if humans called this response force regulars, what did they call their actual military? The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of receiving Commander Veltar's report. Representatives from 47 member species gathered in the vast chamber orbiting the neutron star Kepler 442, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sounds, lights, and pheromone signatures that the universal translators struggled to interpret. Chancellor Mordun of the Altarian Republic called for order, his massive bulk shifting on the ceremonial platform. As one of the galaxy's oldest spacefaring civilizations, the Altarians had always served as mediators in the Council, their 4,000-year perspective lending weight to their decisions. "We have called this emergency session," Mordun announced, his voice carrying across the chamber through a dozen different translation matrices, "to address the disturbing report from our Zephyrian colleagues regarding human military capabilities." A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. The Zephyrians were known for their accuracy and conservative estimates. If they reported something extraordinary, it was almost certainly worse than they described. Ambassador Theklan from the Kethmoran Empire was the first to respond, his scarred carapace reflecting the chamber's light in sharp angles. The Kethmorans had lost more territory to the Devourers than any other species, and their warrior culture had been shaken to its core by repeated defeats. "Honorable Chancellor," Theklan's voice carried the growling undertones of barely controlled rage, "my people have fought the Devourer plague for 50 cycles. We have lost 7 worlds, including our secondary capital. The idea that these, humans, could eliminate an invasion force with 0 casualties is either the most elaborate deception in galactic history, or we have severely underestimated their nature." Dr. Yixel of the Cerebrin Collective floated forward, her energy form pulsing with rapid calculations. "The mathematical probability of the described engagement is approximately 1 in 4 trillion. Either the human vessels possess technology at least 3 centuries more advanced than anything in our databases, or they employed tactics so fundamentally different from known military doctrine that our models cannot account for them. There is a third possibility," came a voice from the shadows at the chamber's edge. The speaker stepped forward, revealing the tall, pale form of Director Zavik from the Office of Galactic Intelligence. His species, the Vorthak, were masters of espionage and information gathering, making them ideal for intelligence work despite their unsettling appearance. "Continue, Director," Mordun prompted. Zavik's black eyes swept the assembly. "We may have been deliberately deceived from the moment humans requested council membership. Our investigation into their integration process has revealed numerous inconsistencies." He gestured, and holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing data streams and analysis reports. When humans first made contact with galactic civilization, they approached through what they called their United Earth Government. This organization presented a small fleet of basic vessels, demonstrated rudimentary weapons technology, and showed scientific advancement consistent with a typical Class 7 civilization. The display shifted, showing the humble human ships that had first arrived at Council Space 50 cycles ago. They looked primitive compared to what Commander Veltar had described witnessing. However, Zavik continued, "Our deep investigation has uncovered evidence that the United Earth Government may be, how do humans phrase it, a front organization." Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. The implication was staggering. No species had ever successfully deceived the Galactic Council about their fundamental nature. "Explain," demanded General Kyth of the Hegemony Defense Force. "Our intelligence agents have been monitoring human space since their integration," Zavik said, his tone growing more ominous. "What we discovered is that the territory controlled by the United Earth Government represents approximately 12% of actual human space." The chamber erupted in chaos. Species representatives began shouting in their native languages, creating a storm of sound that took several minutes for Mordun to quiet. 12%? Ambassador Theklan's voice cut through the noise. You're saying that what we thought was their entire civilization is less than 1/8 of their actual territory? Correct. And that's merely the territory we've been able to map. Our long-range surveys suggest human settlements extend far beyond even our revised estimates. They appear to control resource-rich systems in sectors we thought were uninhabited. Dr. Yixel's energy form flickered rapidly with computational activity. The resource requirements for the fleet described in the Zephyrian report would necessitate the industrial output of at least 40 major systems. If humans control that many systems, their total population could be between 800 billion and 1 trillion individuals, Zavik finished, making them potentially the largest single civilization in known galactic history. The silence that followed was deafening. The combined population of all council species was approximately 600 billion. If humans outnumbered the rest of the galaxy, the implications were terrifying. There's more, Zavik continued remorselessly. We've detected evidence of human vessels in nearly every major conflict zone over the past 50 cycles. Ships matching human design signatures have been observed during the Sector 7 rebellion, the Vegan colonial war, and the frontier disputes. In every case, these vessels appeared to be conducting reconnaissance. They've been watching us, Theklan growled. Learning our capabilities, studying our tactics. The pattern suggests a comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation spanning decades, Zavik agreed. What's more disturbing is that in several instances, human vessels were detected in both sides of a conflict, suggesting they may have been deliberately prolonging engagements to gather more data. Senator Valtar of the Democratic Union of Worlds, a species known for their pacifist philosophy, finally spoke. Director Zavik, you're describing a civilization that has been systematically deceiving and manipulating galactic politics for 5 decades. Such behavior would be an act of war under galactic law, Chancellor Mordun finished grimly. The question now becomes, what do we do about it? General KYTH's response was immediate. We demand answers. Send a diplomatic mission to this United Earth government and require full disclosure of human capabilities, territory, and intentions. If they refuse, we consider them a hostile force. And if they agree to meet but continue their deception? Dr. Yixel asked. Then, we'll know we're dealing with a threat that may require military response, Theklan said, his warrior instincts clearly aroused. Director Zavik raised a pale hand. Before we consider any aggressive action, there's one more piece of information the Council needs to consider. Our analysis of the weapons used against the Devourers suggests technologies that shouldn't exist. New displays materialized, showing energy signature analysis and theoretical projections. The molecular disintegration weapons observed in the battle operate on principles that violate several fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. The gravitational anomaly that absorbed the surviving Devourer vessels appears to have been an artificial singularity, controlled and directed with impossible precision. What are you saying? Mordun asked, though his tone suggested he dreaded the answer. I'm saying that human technology appears to be so far in advance of our own that we may not be capable of understanding it, much less countering it. The gap between their demonstrated capabilities and our own is larger than the gap between our technology and that of a primitive species using stone tools. The implications hung heavy in the chamber's recycled atmosphere. If humans possessed technology that advanced, they could potentially defeat the combined forces of the entire Galactic Council without significant difficulty. There's one more possibility we must consider, Senator Valtar said quietly. What if their deception was protective? Elaborate, Mordun prompted. Think about our reaction to this information. We immediately began discussing military responses and threats. What if humans concealed their true nature because they knew it would terrify us? What if they've been trying to integrate peacefully with galactic society despite being powerful enough to simply conquer it? The question created an uncomfortable silence. It raised the possibility that humanity's deception had been motivated not by malice, but by a desire to avoid the very confrontation they now faced. That, said Director Zavik, is what makes them so dangerous. A species that powerful, that capable of deception, that thoughtful in their approach to galactic politics, they're not acting like any civilization we've encountered before. Then, we need answers, Mordun declared. I'm authorizing the formation of a special diplomatic mission to human space. We will demand full disclosure of their capabilities, territorial extent, and long-term intentions. We will also request an explanation for their deception and assurance that they pose no threat to galactic stability. And, if they refuse? General KYTH asked. Then, we'll know where we stand, the Chancellor replied grimly. But, I suspect, given what we've learned today, that the humans won't refuse. The question is whether we'll be prepared for whatever truths they choose to reveal. As the session adjourned and representatives began preparing for what could be the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history, one thought echoed in every mind present: they were about to meet with a species that had casually eliminated humanity's greatest known threat while hiding capabilities that dwarfed the rest of the galaxy combined. For the first time in galactic history, the Council was approaching a first contact scenario where they weren't the dominant power. The humans had been among them for 50 cycles, studying them, learning from them, and quietly building what appeared to be the most formidable civilization the galaxy had ever seen. The diplomatic mission would either herald a new age of cooperation between species of vastly different capabilities, or it would be the last peaceful contact before a conflict that would reshape the galaxy forever. Either way, nothing would ever be the same. The diplomatic vessel Harmony of Voices dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, carrying representatives from 12 major galactic civilizations. What they found waiting for them was beyond anything they had imagined. The system wasn't just defended, it was transformed. Massive orbital structures surrounded every planet, gleaming cities that could house billions floating in perfect formation around gas giants. Dyson spheres in various stages of completion encased 3 stars in nearby systems, their surfaces crackling with energy that could power entire galactic sectors. But, it was the military presence that left the delegation speechless. The fleet that had destroyed the Devourers was nowhere to be seen. Instead, what appeared to be construction vessels and civilian craft moved through the system in their thousands, going about daily business with casual indifference to the arrival of galactic representatives. Yet every one of those civilian vessels was larger and more sophisticated than the finest warships in the galactic fleet. By the eternal void, whispered Ambassador Theclon, his warriors I recognizing the true nature of what they were seeing. Those aren't construction ships. They're all military vessels. Every single one. Chancellor Mordun studied the displays with growing unease. Director Zavik, your assessment? Sir, Zavik's voice was tight with barely controlled fear. I count over 50,000 vessels in this system alone. The smallest ones are larger than our flagship. The energy signatures suggest each one could single-handedly engage our entire escort fleet. Dr. Yixel's computations were running at maximum capacity, her energy form flickering wildly. Impossible. The industrial capacity required to build and maintain this infrastructure would require the resources of hundreds of star systems. The population needed to crew these vessels alone would be larger than the entire galactic population, Senator Veltar finished quietly. We're not looking at a hidden military fleet. We're looking at a civilization so vast and advanced that we can't even comprehend its scale. A new voice joined their communications channel, speaking perfect galactic standard with what their translation systems identified as a warm, welcoming tone. Diplomatic vessel Harmony of Voices, this is Admiral Sarah Chin of the Sol Defense Coordination. Welcome to our space. Please follow the navigation markers to dock with Station Unity. Secretary General Rodriguez is waiting to meet with your delegation. The voice was pleasant, professional, and utterly terrifying in its casual confidence. These beings weren't concerned about a diplomatic mission from the galactic community. They were treating it like a routine visit from neighbors. Station Unity was a structure that redefined the concept of scale. Larger than most moons, it hung in space like an artificial world, its surface gleaming with cities and landing bays that could accommodate vessels of any size. As their ship approached, the delegation could see beings moving on the station's surface, tiny figures that looked remarkably like the humans they thought they knew. But these humans moved with purpose and confidence that suggested they had never known fear or uncertainty. They controlled technology that made them gods by galactic standards, yet they went about their business as if it were perfectly normal. The docking bay they were assigned to could have housed the entire diplomatic fleet with room to spare. As they disembarked, they were met by a small group of humans in simple, elegant clothing that somehow managed to look more impressive than the finest ceremonial robes in galactic fashion. Secretary General Rodriguez was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and kind eyes that held depths the delegation couldn't fathom. She greeted them with genuine warmth, as if she were welcoming old friends rather than representatives of civilizations that had just discovered they'd been living next to sleeping giants. "Welcome to Unity Station," she said, her voice carrying none of the tension that filled every other being in the docking bay. "I know you have questions. Please, let me show you something first, and then we can talk." She led them to what she called an observation deck, though the term hardly did justice to the vast transparent chamber that offered a 360-degree view of local space. What the delegation saw there changed everything they thought they understood about the universe. The Sol system wasn't just inhabited, it was cultivated. Entire asteroid belts had been converted into vast manufacturing complexes. Planets had been carefully terraformed to support different types of life. Most astonishing of all, the space between worlds was filled with habitats that supported trillions of beings from hundreds of different species. "You see," Rodriguez said gently, "when we say we're human, we're not just talking about the species that evolved on Earth. We're talking about everyone who chooses to be part of human civilization." Chancellor Mordun found his voice first. "How many? In Sol system? About 40 billion. In human space overall?" Rodriguez paused, consulting something that might have been a neural implant. "Just over 12 trillion, representing about 4,000 different species." The number was incomprehensible. Human civilization contained more individuals than had ever been thought possible, and most of them weren't even genetically human. "You've been hiding this from us," Theclon accused, though his tone held more awe than anger. Rodriguez's expression grew sad. "We've been hiding from the patterns we observed in galactic history. Would you like to see something that might explain our caution?" Without waiting for an answer, she activated a display that showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy spanning the last 10,000 years. Civilizations rose and fell in accelerated time, showing their expansion, their conflicts, and their inevitable decline. "Every major civilization follows the same pattern," Rodriguez explained. "They expand until they encounter another major power. They fight. One absorbs the other or both are weakened enough to be conquered by a third party. In 10,000 years of recorded galactic history, not one major civilization has successfully coexisted with another truly powerful neighbor for more than a few centuries." The pattern was undeniable. Even the great civilizations represented in their delegation had only achieved their current status by absorbing or destroying potential rivals. "So we made a choice," Rodriguez continued. "We would integrate slowly, carefully, allowing galactic civilization to get to know us as individuals rather than as a threat. We hoped that by the time our true capabilities became known, we would have built enough trust and friendship to break the historical pattern." "The Devourer attack forced our hand," Admiral Chen added, having joined them on the observation deck. "We couldn't allow a threat of that magnitude to exist, even if stopping it meant revealing capabilities we had hoped to keep hidden for another few centuries." Dr. Yixel's energy form was pulsing rapidly. "The mathematics of your civilization are impossible. The coordination required to manage 12 trillion individuals, the resources needed to support that population, the technology necessary to bind it all together, it violates every principle of organizational theory." Secretary General Rodriguez smiled. "Doctor, you're thinking like a civilization that evolved in scarcity. When you have access to the resources of multiple galaxies, when your technology allows you to manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, when every individual has access to computational power that exceeds the total of your entire galactic network, the old rules no longer apply." "Multiple galaxies?" Senator Valtar's voice was barely a whisper. "We've been expanding for about 800 years, though we only established our first permanent settlements outside this galaxy about 2 centuries ago. The local cluster contains 14 galaxies with suitable conditions for supporting life. We've begun preliminary development in 7 of them. The scope of human expansion was beyond anything the galactic representatives could process. While they had been struggling to maintain civilization across a few thousand star systems, humans had been quietly colonizing multiple galaxies. Why? Chancellor Mordun asked. Why expand so far? Why build so much? What drives a civilization to grow beyond any conceivable need? Rodriguez's expression became thoughtful. Because we learned something about the universe that changed everything for us. Would you like to see? She led them to another chamber, this one filled with displays showing deep space observations, quantum mechanical equations, and data streams that seemed to track the fundamental forces of the universe itself. About 900 years ago, our scientists discovered that the universe is dying, she said simply. Not in billions of years, as we had thought, but much sooner. The force responsible for cosmic expansion is accelerating beyond its normal parameters. In approximately 50,000 years, the universe will expand so rapidly that atomic bonds will no longer be able to form. Everything will dissolve into isolated particles drifting through infinite emptiness. The revelation hit the delegation like a physical blow. They were looking at data that showed the eventual death of everything that had ever existed or ever could exist. We faced a choice, Rodriguez continued. We could accept extinction, or we could try to do something about it. Our scientists believe it's possible to create stable pocket universes that could survive the cosmic dissolution. But, such a project would require resources on a scale that. She gestured at the displays showing human civilization's vast scope. Well, on a scale like this. You're building civilization across multiple galaxies to save the universe itself, Veltar said, understanding beginning to dawn. We're building civilization across multiple galaxies to save everyone, Rodriguez corrected. Every species, every individual consciousness that wants to survive. The pocket universes we're designing will have room for trillions of civilizations, each one able to develop according to its own nature and desires. Admiral Chen stepped forward. This is why we've been so careful about revealing ourselves. We're not trying to conquer anyone or impose our will on galactic civilization. We're trying to save everyone, but we knew that a civilization capable of building transgalactic arc ships would be seen as a threat by anyone who didn't understand our true purpose. The Devourers, Theclon said suddenly. They weren't just invaders. They were a test. In a way, yes, Rodriguez admitted. Any species that poses a genuine existential threat to galactic civilization has to be stopped. We can't save civilizations that destroy themselves or others. But, we also wanted to see how the galactic community would react to our intervention. And, now you know, Mordun said grimly. Now we know, Rodriguez agreed. The question is, what happens next? We could continue hiding, pretending to be a minor civilization while secretly working to save the universe. Or we can work together openly, sharing knowledge and resources to ensure that every species has a place in whatever comes after the cosmic dissolution. The chamber fell silent as the representatives struggled with the magnitude of what they had learned. Humanity wasn't just the most powerful civilization in galactic history, they were actively working to preserve the possibility of civilization beyond the heat death of the universe. You said every species that wants to survive, Dr. Yixel observed. What about those that don't want your help? Rodriguez's expression grew sad. Then, they have the right to choose extinction. We won't force survival on anyone. But, we will make sure that every thinking being has the opportunity to make that choice with full knowledge of the alternatives. Chancellor Mordun looked out at the Sol system, at the impossible scope of human achievement, at the casual demonstration of power that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever imagined. You really intend to save us all? We really intend to try, Rodriguez replied. The question is whether galactic civilization will let us. As the diplomatic delegation prepared for the journey back to Council space, they carried with them knowledge that would change everything. The humans weren't conquerors or threats, they were gardeners tending a cosmic preserve, building arcs for species that didn't even know they needed saving. The galaxy was about to learn that the most terrifying military force in known history was also its greatest hope for survival. And that realization would challenge every assumption about power, civilization, and the nature of existence itself. The humans called their defense forces regulars because to them, the preservation of life was just another day at the office. They had been quietly working to save the universe while the rest of the galaxy struggled with petty territorial disputes and resource conflicts. Soon, everyone would have to decide, would they join humanity's cosmic preservation project, or would they face the dying universe alone? The choice, as Rodriguez had promised, would be theirs to make.